We are now proceeding with the second panel discussion of the conference, which is on the topic High Technology Competition between the US and China, Effects on India. This panel would be chaired by Mr. K. Satyanarayan, Director, New Horizon Media, Chennai. New Horizon Media Private Limited is into book publishing and development of cloud-based applications. He's an alumnus of Loyola College, IIT Madras, and Cornell University. He's also a member of the Chennai Center for China Studies. His interests include publishing, public policy, and cloud computing. He has also been a keen watcher of China for many years. Further, we also have an all-encompassing panel for this session, as its esteemed members come from the industry, academia, as well as the government. They are Mr. Arun Mambali, semiconductor professional and writer, Professor S. Chandrasekhar, Honorary Visiting Professor, National Institute of Advanced Studies, Mr. Dominic Karunesudas, Founder and Chief Technology Officer, Offensive Defense Ciphertext Consulting Private Limited, and Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, former Director General, Artillery. Now, I would love to invite the Chair, Mr. K. Satyanarayan, to deliver the Chair's remarks and introduce the distinguished panelists. Please, sir.
So, we have had quite interesting discussions so far, and we all know science and technology is something that's an absolute necessity for India for driving growth, for a strong economy, and also for defense preparedness. And the competition between US and China provides us some opportunities now. So this session, which is titled High-Tech Competition between the US and China and the Effects and Opportunities for India. We have a good panel here. I will start by asking Arun Mambari to speak about the semiconductor space, the opportunities that are opening up, what our aspirations should be, and how we can go ahead and achieve them. Arun, over to you.
Okay, so good afternoon everyone. I won't comment much on the picture except to point out that there is a third animal behind, right? Alright, so 9 slides, but we'll quickly run over it, but it's basically talking about my perspective or my understanding of why the US-China tech war is happening on the semiconductor side in particular. What is its effects on India? Just one slide, because maybe more of discussion on that. And then what government should do, and startups and things like that are just some suggestions. Next slide, please. Okay. So, in short, the US-China chip war or semiconductor war, whichever way you want to put it, in my opinion, there's 2 aspects to it. One is the industrial aspect, or the capturing the market aspect, and the second is the security aspect, or the cyber security or chip security aspect. So, in this one, these both are charts published by Semiconductor Industry Association, which is a US-based organization. The chart on the left is the 2019 picture, and I'll spend a few minutes explaining, or a few seconds explaining what it is. On the left-hand side are the various segments of a supply chain for making a chip. So on the top is mostly related to design. Later you will see manufacturing, in that again equipments, materials, and then wafer fabrication. That's my area of interest and expertise, chip fabrication. And then comes packaging. You might have heard the news about the Micron packaging facility being approved in India. That's what it is, adds a 6% value in the overall supply chain. And then if what is shown here is each country, how much percentage they have globally. My understanding of this chart is that if, let's say, there is a wafer fabrication Intel, which is US headquartered, but the company or the factory is in China, the percentage is counted in China. That's how I believe this chart is. Whichever way, this in 2019 showed China has a share of 16% of wafer fabrication, if you can see that. Okay, anyway, it's there, right? 2 years later, 2021, it says China has 21%, overcome even Taiwan. China is the first in that. Now, there might be a bit of an exaggeration because SIA wants US government to the CHIPS Act, $52 billion and so on and so forth. So maybe scare, somebody in the morning session said the military complex is scaring the hell out of the US government. So maybe there's a bit of that kind of a thing happening here also. Yet, it's very clear that China has reached a significant amount of manufacturing, both in the sense of the last mile packaging. You can already see that's pretty big in China. and the one before that, which is the fabrication, which adds about 20% of the value chain. It's not yet that strong in the design and so on and so forth, but it's picking up there as well. Next slide, please. How are they doing this? You can see this is a little bit old chart. I haven't looked at the latest numbers, but 15,000 firms registered as semiconductor enterprises just in 2020. Of course, many of them would have gone bust. Some of them may have been shell companies, but yet, there can't be smoke without fire. There's something there. The numbers could be exaggerated. Just semiconductor fabs alone, 28 additional fabs. China already has a lot of them. Additional fabs. Fabs are the actual, where the chip is actually fabricated, right? To me, that is real making the chip. You keep saying made in India by just packaging a chip or packaging an iPhone. To me, it doesn't count as made in India. Fabricating the chip to me is the ultimate goal. This is the second aspect, which is the security aspect. Many of these news. So the first one talks about China hacking into industrial computers, right? Amazon, Apple, and so on. This was later on denied. The companies vehemently denied it. I think the publisher had to apologize and so on and so forth. Yet, maybe there was something to it. On the top, I'm not a person who really knows the defense analyst space, but that is from an Indian defense analyst. Some of you might know him. It's written in a book on how some of the US and Chinese warships and so on failed because of hacked chips or hardware trojans. Whichever way it is, the US Chips Act, the third picture there, the fact sheet, the US Chips Act does not hide anything in terms of the fact that it is meant to counter China. It's explicitly written there. And finally, there's an article which was there, Cold War 2.0, which we had a session in the morning, will be fought on semiconductors, not on arms. That might be too specific, but still, we can say technology. Next slide, please. You might be wondering, is it really possible in terms of inserting a Trojan into a virus into even at the hardware stage? Yes. There are multiple. What is shown on the top is a very simple example. I don't want to get into the details of it. This is the bottom one, shows the various stages. The design of the chip, from design it goes into the fab. In the fab also, once the fab gets the design, there's some processing that happens in the fab before the photo mask is made. At any of those stages, it can be compromised without even noticing, and at the right moment, it will fail. And I believe it has already happened in India, but some people deny it. Some people say that it might have happened in India already in a big program. On the right hand side, how does US counter this or address this to a large extent? There's something called a trusted foundry. So any chip that is made for the US Department of Defense has to be designed by US citizens sitting in US. If they travel outside US, they cannot have access to that design. It has to be fabricated in a foundry which is certified. Global Foundries, where I used to work, is one of them. Intel, I think, has it for the advanced nodes and so on. Very stringent measures. That's how they are fabricated for the Department of Defense. These are mostly for silicon-based chips. For non-silicon-based chips, compound semiconductors like gallium nitride and so on and so forth, there might be fabs directly run by the Department of Defense also, because they are smaller in volume and specific needs. But silicon fabs has to be high volume, only then they will have the yield and so on that is needed. Next slide, please. I think I'm at the 7.5 minute mark. Effects on India. So, sorry? Okay. I've just put it as positive but unclear, because we know in the long term. Negative but unclear. Positive, for example, the Micron packaging unit that we got. Again, it's a chip packaging unit. There is another assembly part segment which companies like Foxconn does, where all the chips are put into a casing. That's a mobile assembly. But this one, what Micron is going to do in India is packaging the chip itself. Cut the chip from a big wafer. The processed chips are cut, diced, packaged and so on. There is both advanced packaging and normal packaging. I don't know which one they're going to do. But in any case, part of it is because Micron got a blow from China, right? And of course, Micron is headed by a person of Indian origin. That's one positive development. Another recent example is an Intel was trying to acquire Tower Semiconductors. The Tower Semiconductors had promised a technology transfer to a certain Indian consortium to open a semiconductor fab in India. But the Chinese regulators did not approve it. Just on the 15th of August, eventually Intel dropped that plan. Now, I have put it in both the places. It could be a positive thing, it could be a negative thing. I think I put it, yeah. So it made us lose a lot of time waiting for that to understand whether the deal is going to go through or not. But it did not go through. At the same time, now Tower Semiconductors, which is Israel based, is now probably free. It can get into newer tie-ups and things like that, and there might still be an opportunity. So these are all, US is trying to put some restrictions to China. China is doing some measures to, it's not even a counter, it's kind of the quid pro quo kind of situation. And we are caught up somewhere in between. The good thing, in some sense, the good thing is that in many of these semiconductor chips and so on, we are at a zero. That's the reality. So we don't really have anything to lose as of now. So if we look at it from that point of view, maybe there's something to gain for us eventually. And then I just put another negative that, one of the morning sessions, there was a mention of why our imports from China keep growing up in spite of all the made in India. So just look at it this way. If you have to have mobile assembly units pick up more and more in India, where do they get the chips from? Not everything from China, but a bunch of them are from China. So naturally, the more assembling units that you pick up in India, till the time you actually make those chips in India, you have to import them, and a lot of it is from China. So your import bill with China is going to go up. Just one example. And what is the eventual solution? Fabricate those chips in India also. So that has been what I have been advocating. Next slide, please. Okay. The government schemes, maybe we can discuss more on this later. On paper, a lot of schemes, a lot of decent amount of money, yet nothing has really taken off except for that Micron one. Why, what more can be done? Again, we can discuss if there is an interest. Next slide, please. So what should be the government doing? I have some thoughts. These are, again, most of them have written articles. In case any media person is left still here from the morning session. I'm an engineer turned media person also. Only thing is I write only on semiconductors, only on India wanting semiconductors and things like that. But I've probably written close to 100 articles already on that topic. There's an India Semiconductor Mission, which is supposed to be the nodal agency evaluating these proposals and things like that. Still doesn't have an industry experience CEO, CTO, despite government opening a job position for that. We should have laser sharp focus. I'm sorry to say this, you have one minister handling 3 heavyweight portfolios, right? So I'm not too sure if that's the way going forward. You have to have focused effort on this. Be transparent, communicate to applicants and public clearly. Many times, the ministry itself doesn't know. It says in the policy, production grade technology license. Can you tell us which are the examples of production grade technology license? The ministry doesn't know. It spends 9 months, 1 year figuring out what they are. What you have written in the policy, you yourself don't know what you mean by that, right? You can't have that kind of a scenario. Do not hype, again, right? These are not always done by the government. It's many times the business houses. I don't want to name any of them specifically because all said and done, for 30 years, 40 years, we slept on this. Now, whichever business house comes forward, I have my sympathies or empathies or whatnot for them because at least some of them are showing interest. But please don't hype. Please don't say things like 100% made in India chip silicon chip will be done in India in 1 year, when building the fab itself will take you 2 years, and then getting it to a point of getting into production will take you another 1 year. So please don't hype. That's my other request. This is again to government. Similarly with, in terms of government, some of the press releases they put out also. Claim what you're really doing, no worries, but don't hype, don't make it as though this is the thing. Next slide. What each of us can do, again, I would learn and distinguish what is what. Statements. I've been writing for 3 years. Believe me, the first 2 years, we were not even, how many minutes, sir? Almost done? Okay. We are not even starting from a zero, we're starting from a negative. 2 years I had to spend correcting the bad notions and then move on to suggesting what next. So with that, I'm almost done. The last slide, if you can. All right. Startups. Again, there are some thoughts. Maybe we can discuss it during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun, for that insightful discussion and also for keeping to time. That's really appreciated. We know that the competition between the US and China is becoming quite stark. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute put out a critical technology tracker report in February of 2023, which looks at the leading critical technology areas. And what they revealed is that China has built the foundations to position itself as the world's leading science and technology superpower by establishing a sometimes stunning lead in high impact research across the majority of critical and emerging technology domains. China's global lead extends to 37 out of 44 technologies across a wide range of technologies spanning space, defense, robotics, energy and the environment, biotechnology, AI, advanced materials and quantum technologies. Now, for some technologies, all of the world's top 10 leading institutions are based in China, and the US comes second in the majority of the 44 technologies that was examined by ASPI, and the US currently leads in a few areas such as high performance computing, quantum computing and vaccines. So the data set also reveals that there's a large gap between China and the US as the leading two countries. Even though they are the leading two countries, there's a large gap. And then there is a small second tier group of countries led by India and the UK. So we are not out of the race, we are still there. And then the rest of the countries that appear in the group include South Korea, Germany, Australia, Italy, and sometimes Japan too. So now we know that China is far ahead. So what did China do to get there? That's the topic of our next speaker's presentation. So I invite Professor Chandrasekhar to talk about what was China's approach to science and technology, how have they been able to achieve this kind of impressive progress in establishing stunning capabilities in science and technology across many different fields, and what can India learn from China and what can India do to try and match those capabilities. Over to Professor Chandrasekhar.
I have only 10 minutes to cover a very big kind of field. So I'm going to stick to the kind of work that we have been doing at NIAS. Okay. Over the last maybe 10 years or so, we've been looking at a number of detailed studies on specific domains of knowledge. We've covered, for example, the nuclear area to some extent, the missile area in some depth. Okay. The extensions to the space and the nuclear power part is also covered to a limited extent. We have done a detailed assessment of Chinese space capabilities. We've looked at some of the major innovations that China has done in areas like anti-ship ballistic missiles. And we've tried and connected these kinds of innovations with the larger, what is called the anti-access area denial military strategy of China, and which both missiles and space and other assets play a role. And finally, we've also tried to assess something about the overall military strategy that China has put in place. Okay. So what I am going to do is, rather than give you the details of all of this, which I have, periodically bored all my colleagues at C3S on all these details, I'm going to take stock of all these things and try to kind of distill something from all these case studies and detailed studies that we've done, in order to get an idea of how exactly has China gone about doing what it has done. Okay. And to what extent is it sustainable? The other question to ask is it always going to be sustainable? So the first thing that I think one must kind of remember is that China got a significant transformation after Mao's death and the takeover by Deng. Okay. I would argue that a lot of what China has achieved today came about because the top-down, largely political agenda that Mao had done, right? And there are a number of instances, for example, how he decided the weight of China's first satellite is one example. There's this other bit about deciding what the targets are for the various missiles that China had kind of developed. So a lot of the early part of the Chinese program under Mao was always centrally driven. It was largely political. Okay. When Deng took over, I think he made a fundamental transformation, which kind of changed it kind of fundamentally changed the structure of the Chinese government, and through that change in the structure of the government, it has actually transformed China into the major economic power that it has become. And Deng's focus was largely not so much on anything else other than economic development. He pushed the idea that economic development was the most important part of what China had to do. And there are many examples. For example, so he came up with this. The first thing he did was to decentralize and create a more decentralized system. Okay, so where all the power was concentrated in Beijing and in the central authorities that ran China, he decided that some part of that power would be shifted to the state governments or the states or the provinces, depending on how you look at the structure of the Chinese governance system. And a large part of it was also kind of translated into individual companies or entities within that system. And he also brought about this reform of what is called the one-third system. He said that 1/3 of the projects that a company or an entity or an R&D lab that would be doing anything in China would be given by the central government. 1/3 had to come by discussions and cooperation with the state governments, and 1/3 had to be earned by itself. Okay. Along with this, he also created several commercial fronts. Okay. And the targets generally given to China at that time was that not only was so most of our work has covered what is called the dual-use technologies that China had. And he very clearly gave this mandate that the civilian requirements, right, must be connected to the military requirements. And he also said that, he wanted China to dominate, specific markets and specific industries. Those were the kinds of mandates that he gave. And he also created all these, what are called commercial entities to look at exports and a whole lot of other stuff that he brought in. So these reforms, in a fundamental sense, decentralized the system, gave more power, in a sense, to the state governments and also more power to the company. And in a sense, it created a generally advanced science and technology-based industrial ecosystems in several parts of the Chinese economy, as well as the Chinese, what I would call the government industry kind of complex in China. So these were some of the things that he had done very well. And if you look at the record of what he has done, I would say that the record has created many, many things that, for example, China is one of the largest producers of nuclear power in the world. It is setting up a huge complex of nuclear power plants, and it is possibly going to be soon overtake the US as the leader in the nuclear industry. There are many ifs and buts about this happening, but China is clearly a very dominant player in the military industry. It has also come up with many, many original innovations. So let me try and talk a little bit about a few of them. The Chinese have what is called, they were the first country in the world to develop what is called this anti-ship ballistic missile. And if you look at the record, every time there has been a crisis over Taiwan, the Americans sent 2 aircraft carriers or 1 aircraft carrier to the Taiwan Straits. And China is generally supposed to keep quiet, which it has done successfully for many times. And then obviously at some stage, when it had become rich enough and when it had become capable enough, it decided that it would do something about it. And if you look at the concept of the ASBM, it is a very interesting concept. All the pieces of knowledge are there, but they put together an architecture that was kind of unique. They also used a lot of the gaps in the international regime, because the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty banned the US from producing anything which is in the range of, I think, 500 to 3,000 kilometers or 4,000 kilometers. Okay, so there were all these other things that that factored in, and so they came up with this fairly creative approach to looking at it. And in order to make it work, they also needed a significant over-the-horizon capability, which meant that they had to go with a large number of satellites. So you can see in the ASBM and this A2AD strategy that China has come up, there is a significant amount of coordination between the different entities within the what are called the military industrial complex within China. And if you go back and look at the record, the Chinese have had a very good record of being able to make the government and different entities in the government work together in order to realize capabilities in key value chains, whether it is the space value chain or the missile value chain or the nuclear weapon value chain or the nuclear power value chain. I think they have done extremely well. So this is one part. The other thing that you want to talk about is, and as the Deng regime transformed into what I call the modern era, and the context of what what China is facing today, especially the hostility from the United States, these innovations are also characterized in a sense by not only are they technological innovations, I would argue, there are also many organizational innovations that they carried out. Typically, for example, right, if you look at the way they have supported and funded, the solar panel capabilities that they have developed. Okay, now we did a study in NIAS about one of the largest solar power plants in the world in a place called Benba. And if you look at the way the Chinese have orchestrated their approach to looking at that huge international project, it gives you an idea of how a little bit about the inner workings of the Chinese government industry complex. Okay, and the plant, the solar farm, has 44 different entities. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. You have 2 minutes more. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So it has many entities, right? And all of the panels that they are. So China funds many of those international. It has about 25% of the funding, and it has got almost, I think, all the solar panels that were supplied by Chinese firms and Chinese companies. Okay. So let me try and come and put all this together in a very brief way. I'm sorry, I kind of. So fundamentally, I would argue that the decentralization that Deng brought in, right, has created an ecosystem, a decentralized ecosystem. Science and technology is built as a part of its DNA of the ecosystem. Each separate value chain or each separate ecosystem or each separate industry has inbuilt capabilities to do R&D. The transfer of R&D to production and scale up is also easily happening, right? And they've also been very creative, not only in the technology-driven creative innovation, they've also been creative in organizational and business innovation. Okay, so these are. So what does this mean? It means that if you look at an innovation process within any large ecosystem, people who generate ideas, they're called idea generators in a typical organizational study of innovation. They are generally at the lower rungs of any entity. In an R&D setup, they're typically working level engineers who are very, very different ideas. Okay. Now, in order for them to be able to access resources, they also need sponsors at a higher level. These sponsors have access to resources, right? Capital, people, infrastructure. They have access to resources, and very often even those resources may not be adequate. They may need access to higher level capabilities because it may have to cut across different organizations and different entities within the S&T or the industrial ecosystem. They must have the power to be able to do that. So these connections have to happen. Okay, and I would argue that if you look at the detailed case studies that we have done, a lot of idea generators are connected with sponsors. They're also connected to orchestrators. And this is not only true of space or nuclear or solar or any one of the things that we have studied in detail. This seems to cut across all kinds of industries and ecosystems and and capabilities and projects, and they cuts across the entire ecosystem. And therefore, I think S&T therefore has become an integral part of a fairly strong internal innovation ecosystem, and it is controlled significantly and supported significantly by the Chinese government. Now, this is kind of different from the US ecosystem. There are many similarities between the US ecosystem and the Chinese ecosystem, but there is a clear difference too. In the Chinese ecosystem, both the marketplace is there, but it is significantly driven and controlled by the state. In the US system, markets and the government work hand in hand. Industries, markets, and the government work hand in hand to create many of the great things that the US has done. So the Chinese system and the US different are similar in many ways, but they're also different in the role of the market and the role of the state. And maybe the Chinese are coming up with a different model, right, than what we generally are used to from the Western ways of looking. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chandrasekhar, for that very succinct talk, where you talked about the way in which China's science and technology program has evolved, and also compared the US and China in terms of their approaches. This is now followed by Dominic Karnesudas. He will be speaking on the challenges for India on the science and technology front, what India can do to jump to the next level in terms of our science and technology capabilities. He will also throw some light on what technology areas India can focus on, and also talk a bit specifically on the cybersecurity front, an area in which he specializes in. Over to you, Dominic.
So I'll be very fast because I just have 10 minutes and I'm scared of the bell. So please note down the questions and more than happy. Yeah, great, thanks. 10 minutes. In between there is a quiz, so don't count, okay? Great. The idea is, I come from a very pragmatic and practical approach to life, and it's reflected in my slides, so please bear with me. So what are the current challenges? Rapid urbanization, growing energy demands, environmental degradation, declining agriculture productivity, weak, unskilled human capital, youngsters coming out of college, not getting jobs. Big problem. They don't even know which career to take. And most of the parents have already decided what career they should take. Who will be a doctor, who will be an engineer, who will be a lawyer. Where is the choice? Yeah, generating productive jobs, new security threats, hostile neighborhood, repositioning of India in a challenging global order, so on and so forth. So everything boils down to the size of the economy. Economy, economy, economy. So quiz, ABC, can you guess the countries? B is India, easy guess. A is? A is China, B is India, C is USA. Look at the gap. Ad hoc research initiatives and infrequent budgetary allocation would not suffice if India is to develop into a vibrant research ecosystem. I spent the first 27 years of my life in IIT Bombay, and I've seen in first hand of what happens inside and what kind of product has come out. So pardon me, it's recently when a lot of media houses clap for Indian origin American citizens becoming CEOs company there, the entrepreneur group that we have, one Hindi saying that padhoge likhoge nahi, to America badega kaisa? If we don't read and write, how will Americans progress? Right? So governance and management of data, retaining technology talent, can you change the angle of the AC? And realigning jobs, commercializing technology innovation. This is a very important point for thriving and supporting entrepreneurs in this country, whether it's IITs, NITs, RECs. We are not focused on commercialization of technology. How many of you have not done yet, but if you have done a PhD in technology sort of an area, have you really seen through that research converts into a commercial successful product? No. Thank you. I love your PPT. We'll talk later.
Academic research and industry connect is
zero. So it's covered here. Coming back to cyber frauds. For those who have not watched it, this Sunday, please binge walk a Netflix series called Jamtara. Beyond Jamtara, there is something called as Mathura. Beyond Mathura, there is also something called as Mewat. They are also coming up as a cyber capital. If you have read the news yesterday or today, there was a 1,400 crore scam in Gujarat. Have you checked it? By a Chinese. A Chinese coming in, making an app, taking 1,400 crore of our blood, not our Gujaratis, blood and sweat money, off he goes. What were we doing? Deepfakes, very big area, AI, separate topic, I'll come to it. One of the American research centers has come up with a report saying that by 2025, the world will lose $10.5 trillion on cybercrime. And the problem in India is another one. Even if there is a loss through a cybercrime related issue, Indians don't want to file FIR. Indians don't want to inform the authorities. And this is major thing in schools and colleges I go. There are a lot of issues faced by youngsters, but they don't want to report. And the worst is, the last person to know are parents. You know the first thing they will get when they inform the parents? Thank you, yes. We are so good at it. One you get. After that, what? You sealed the child's freedom to express permanently. They trust me, bhaiya, uncle, whatever, I am standing on the stage and I know, because a common pattern, some young, nice girl is standing at the corner to talk to me and she will express everything that happened. And you know the worst part, the worst feeling, I know there is no solution to this. So I give very practical, pragmatic approach. Forget about this. Next time onwards, if you are in a relationship, no relationship is permanent. Don't share intimate pictures. That's it. And we'll keep this anonymous. So this is a very big topic. My startup is also focused on building skills for youngsters, armed forces, other players to build systems in cybersecurity. Another very big area, I was just talking to you yesterday. To nurture entrepreneurship, people who are job creators, wealth creators, you need access to capital. One of the easiest way or nice way to raise capital is what we call angel investors, angel funding, right? So bunch 4 of us, 50 lakhs, 2 crore we have, we'll define what area, are we sector agnostic or new, whatever it is. But now the government comes up with a brilliant idea. They say angel investor will be taxed. So if I have 2 crore rupees, why do I want to pay tax? I will put that in FD. Or even better, I'll put that in FD through my mom's name. I'll get better. In 1 crore, I'll get 9.5 lakh rupees. Why should I bother? Where are we taking this? All said and done, if American entrepreneurs have really taken up all this Silicon Valley and India is America, IIT is India's MIT and all those things, where is the liquidity of cash? Skilled manpower, please bear with me. Payment process timeline, what I mean by that is, discussing during lunch, you do a work for the government or defense, and you don't know when you are paid back. Why will we do work? So some of the startups where I'm advisor or board member, shareholder, rule is very simple. No deal is better than a bad deal. Don't do deals. Because raising capital is difficult. You borrow money from the market at some serious interest. You do the work, but you don't know if you're going to be paid back. And by then, if the officer has left that department, then it will take 8 lifetimes. India has no dearth of aspirational human capital. It is proven. Indians leave India and they prosper. Why? We are 48th globally on Global Innovation Index. India must capitalize on its vast potential to improve its performance. Ad hoc research initiatives and infrequent budgetary allocation would not suffice if India is to develop a vibrant research ecosystem. It needs to commit sustained investment for both public and private sector in improving education, R&D infrastructure across all areas. Angel tax did not exist 12, 18 months back, or plus minus, now it exists. So if somebody wants to invest money here, okay, let me put a better example. I come from Kerala. My brother is in Singapore. He got emotional one day, ki Dom, karte hain kuch. Let's do something in Kerala. I said, that's the last place on earth to go. Though I want to be there. If you want to invest in India, currently there are 2 places, my personal opinion. Hyderabad, Chennai. Nowhere else. Come, work, let's figure it out. Kerala, not now. Because there is a fear that if I invest will I get ROI on that? Or the money, because as we say, high risk, high return. Private equity, venture capital, angel investment is very high risk. And if you have heard this common pattern that in any startup investment, 98% company bust. It is a 2% who can cover up for the rest. Yeah. Low cost engineering skills in high volume. India currently produces approximately 2.6 million science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM graduates each year. Almost twice as many as US, Russia, Japan combined. Are they getting jobs? I purposely put the URL because most people don't believe. The government of India owns 10.7 lakh crores to MSME. Startup is part of that. 5 crores of that is mine. Not paid since 2019. And I know I will never get. Right? Even if this much money is released, there will be change in the economy. And most of the startups are getting shut, MSMEs are getting shut because MSME, they suffer, it's like poverty. You suffer in silence, in pain. You don't go and complain about it. You are just suffering. One of the chief contributors to the talent mismatch is, all the engineers will relate to it, disparity between college curricula and industry expectation. Right? I am from electrical branch. World War II, what machine motors were running, that were taught. Where is the correlation? Where is the latest one? How much time? Dude. The last slide, last slide. This is just my humble suggestion. Redesign the school system. I know it's easier said than done. This is just a suggestion. Redesign the school system, make it open to everybody. The current model is exceptionally deficient and elitist. The current framework is flawed. Simply the most extravagant approach, the best training. You know, a lot of Indians who go to US, why do they go to US? Apart from the fact that they have great universities, it's a scholarship. If not for the scholarship, even I got an opportunity to go to the Valley. I didn't go. One, the scholarship that they offered was not good enough, and I didn't have enough in my bank balance to go myself. So it's a scholarship that drives. Scholarship is stopped, Indians and Chinese will, most of them may think again. And to counter that, are we building great universities in this country? And if you think today, all said and done, I urge some of you to listen to Kishore Mehbubani. Pragmatic approach. The Chinese think very, 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 very long term. We are thinking about today, tomorrow. Number 4, spending overall on R&D has risen from 2.1% to 2.5%. Ours is less than 1%. Somebody gave the number, I think it's 0.66 or something like that. Right? Innovation to develop the various points I mentioned. 45 science strategy. Even for offensive cyber ops, there is no budget. And if the budget is given, they want result next week. And the Chinese are doing it for 20 years. Last point, don't drink. Professional and mutually respected civilian military strategy. Learn to trust your civilians and treat them with absolute respect. Don't invite them and humiliate them. If you want to win the cyber war, it will be the civilians, it will be the kids who will make it for you. So, and if you are committed to paying something, pay that. Don't make them beg. Technology commercialization, as I mentioned. This is a quote from Jamshed Godrej. Okay, done. Please read it out. All those people who think that China, companies in China will shift to India, no, the answer is Vietnam. And they're doing it pretty well. Vietnam. Just forget Indian media houses, check the news. I'm done. I had 2-3 more slides, but maybe some other day. These are details on investment challenges. There is something called as AIF, Alternate Investment Fund. Venture capital, private equity falls under the bracket of AIF. Now the government has changed a rule in such a way that if a bunch of us create a PE fund, we cannot take our money back. Right? Why can't, it's my money, no? It's like you going to the bank and the bank is saying, we'll not give you money. So why will somebody invest? And none of this is covered in the media, right? Tax, very big challenge. I'll stop. I had some more, but next time. This is a recent image I took, forget the shape, from Mint newspaper of where we stand. Right? World top 10 asset managers are in India. BlackRock exited, never in India. Can you imagine if you just change your policy, they all want to come here? Thanks. Sorry for the...
Thank you, Dominic, for that presentation with some hard truths, which we really need to think about, and also for sticking to time. I think the morning's sessions getting delayed is impacting us now. Unfortunately, we have to live with that. So this is going to be followed by General Shankar. He will be speaking about lethal autonomous weapon systems. It's an evolving technology in terms of both the technology itself as well as how it can be implemented on the battlefield. And we look forward to hearing from you about that, General Shankar. Over to you.
Yeah, we're going to talk of autonomous weapon systems without, these days when I think of China, I'm reminded of Ernest Hemingway. He said, how do you go bankrupt? 2 ways, gradually and then suddenly. Right? And it's in a famous book of his. I think China is in this gradual phase, if I may say so. Okay, I just want to show these are the kinds of subjects I'm tackling on China these days, right? Yesterday I showed with all these people, China has all these major problems. We think China is a behemoth, it's not. Even PLA we've discussed. I've also dissected Xi Jinping's psychology. The other day I had a talk with Bipindra, who's Eurasian Times editor, on China as a peaking power. And just 2 days back I said the inevitable and irrevocable decline of Chinese power. And I'm very clear about it. And it is going to happen. And it is happening. Right. But then we'll talk of autonomous weapons. Anyone who wants to get on that journey, please join me. I have a channel which runs 5 days, 4 days a week. And I get anyone who wants to talk on China on a subject of his choice, and I'm prepared to air it. Because the more we know about China, the better off we are. Then we'll have less people like Dominic Karnadas coming and telling that China thinks 400 years ahead. If they had thought 400 years ahead, you should thank, what's that chap? Deng Xiaoping. He gave them that one-child policy, which will ensure they can think 400 years ahead. They'll finish in the next half a century. Okay, after that you'll have only half the number of Chinese left in this world. It's a fact, and it is irreversible. What is autonomous weapons? Weapons that can select and apply force to targets without human intervention. The next part is important. It includes, yeah? Oh, no, don't worry. Right? It includes the ability to identify, track, and confirm. That's the 3 important operative aspects of autonomous weapon system. And then deliver lethal force without intervention. Okay, there are 3 types of weapon systems. One is human in the loop, one is human on the loop, and one human out of the loop. The out of the loop is the one is a fire and forget. You just put a guy, program it and let it go. That's completely autonomous. The first one is almost, I wouldn't call it autonomous, human in the loop, but the chap is always there. It's automated. The in-between one is a semi-automated, where the person is somewhere in the loop, somewhere or the other when a weapon is fired. I am putting it in very simple terms without complicating things. Okay, most of the time today when we talk of lethal autonomous weapons, they are a different class and they are not on the battlefield as yet. They are not the most popular weapons going around, so we will not talk of it, right? But what is normally spoken of is the semi-autonomous weapon systems, right? Once activated, it is intended only to engage individual targets or specific target groups that have been selected. It's used more as a force multiplier. It is not a weapon system on its own, as a force multiplier. It normally does dull, dirty and dangerous missions, which you would not like humans to do or you don't have the capability to do. And the repetitive missions like mine clearance. You don't this thing. That's the operative word. So that's why I said air defense systems, mines, mine clearance, UAVs, killer robots, submersible drones, unmanned surface vehicles. These are the things which come in this group of semi-autonomous weapons. And this is where the focus is. Okay. What are the technologies? Robotics, AI enablement of weapons, material sciences, sensor technologies, communication and control technologies. These are all high-tech stuff. There's no doubt about it. We've already seen how China and USA are far ahead of the curve. They can keep being ahead of the curve. I mean, let me be very honest with you. I'm not a great fan of technology on the battlefield. Because every battlefield through history has shown there's an optimum level of technology it can absorb. Beyond that, there's a man who has to fight. And that is what Ukraine war has proven completely. Okay. And I'm of the firm opinion, cyber operations have no place on a conventional battlefield. It's good for grey zone operations. It's good for people to say, oh, I'll bust all bank balances. It's good for cyber crimes like Dominic said, to fool people. It's good to fool young girls into, nude photographs or something like that. It's a hard fact. But that's what cyber crime is all about. Beyond that, it has got no value. Because it has not, unlike what many people said, it has not changed the course of warfare in Ukraine. Right? And same goes for many of these gizmo technologies. AI. Look, you can't fight a war with normal intelligence. How do you fight it with artificial intelligence? You have to think hard on this business all over. Okay? So, okay. And one has to see what is the cost. The huge amount of cost invested in this. The effectiveness, ethical issues are involved. You don't want weapons going all around the countryside and doing what they want. And at many times, these days you go on the net, you will see Pakistan missiles or something like that. You will see a missile going back and hitting you back. That's the Pakistani cartoon. That's what might happen with many of these. They are misdirected on the battlefield. Right? And then you get unintended outcomes. Many times when you think of using semi-autonomous weapons or autonomous weapons, you aim for something happens, and it becomes big. Okay, I mean, the best equivalent I'll give you is in what happens in CIOps, counterinsurgency. Every action might be tactical in nature, but it has strategic outcomes. A small thing like a Jawan putting a hand on a woman, right, might tomorrow figure in the parliament and the sacking of the CM. Things like that. This law, as they normally you will hear, has got this problem. And of course, there's a huge rethink post the Ukraine war. And that's all I have, because we have learned how to blow up these autonomous weapons beyond a point. Technologies are important, right? Technologies are important. Why? The one thing which I spoke of is technology enablement of weapon systems. Okay, when you talk of the battlefield. So the integration of technology in the battlefield is a different ballgame altogether. And that is what we have to do. Okay, now a lot of things have been told about the Chinese capability and technology and their organization and Deng giving, someone said he has full control, someone says complete decentralization, he succeeded. Just think, I leave with you a thought. China has a new organization. China has a whole set of new weapon systems. China has always a set of new leaders, because Xi Jinping and all these fellows have taken lifelong Pergolax and given it to everyone. So, purge karte hi rehte hain. So, all the leaders are missing at every point of time. It has happened. This is fact, right? And they always have new people because it's a conscript army. Everything is new in China. So, what is their fighting capability? Right? So, I think we have to understand China more, right? And it just highlights what Namrata was telling Mr. Prasannan. Our media highlights China more than necessary. They don't have that Superman capability. They might have had a lot of GDP $19 trillion. What's the dead GDP in it? The dead GDP is the 30% housing which they have. This is the only country which has more houses than people to live in. It's dead. That's what their problem is, and they're never going to recover. And they have more houses, the people are getting lesser. Okay? So it's dead. They have had more infrastructure than what is required. Their high-speed trains don't give them returns. They have dug canals from where water can't go from one place to the other, from all their crazy things. And believe you me, if you go into China in a little more detail, one of the things which I showed, climate change. Climate change is going to affect China the most. Climate change will affect India also, it will affect Europe also, it will affect us. The way China has gone about it, it's going to hit them. Their combination of their declining demography and climate change is going to kill them. And that killing will happen after 2030. Till 2030, they will not recover. And this is not what I say. This is what Paul Krugman, who is a Nobel Prize economist, says. And another guy called Michael Pettis, who defined 5 paths and 3 choices for China to recover. Has my time done? Thank you. Right, that's what I said. It's time. So we need to do what we have to do and then not just go by what comes out by China. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, General. I think I should commend everybody on the panel for keeping to time and ensuring that we have some time left over for questions. So we have 2 questions, I am told, from the audience here and 2 questions from the audience online. So we can open it up for questions. Yeah, Mr. Sivaram.
You said declining agricultural productivity in India. It's not correct.
No, I said it's increasing in fact.
Dominic, because I work in the fields, right from Varanasi to Villupuram. We are an organization involved in increasing productivity. Continuously productivity is increasing. Rice, wheat, everything. The only problem is we have still not touched the average productivity in the case of rice, but we are getting close to it. Otherwise, with the declining land under agriculture, we would not be producing 330 million tons of food grains. So the one thing which you have to correct. Second point is regarding angel taxation. I do agree there are a lot of problems in regard to angel taxation. One of the principal problems, because I was Revenue Secretary of India, that's why I'm saying this. So one of the principal problems is, which they encountered, that is if you get money from abroad and your angel company, whatever it is, it's giving, let's say, equity. Now, if you're getting 15 crores funds from there and you give an equity, then they say, they see the difference between the fair market value of your company and the amount of money that comes from it. So the fair market value of a company is 10 crores and you're getting 15 crores. The difference between the two are subject to taxation. But they are continuously improving it because they were very much worried about money laundering. Why? Because if money laundering steps we do not take, then we get into problem with the Financial Action Task Force. That is one of the reasons. Of course, there are still problems regarding angel taxation which are getting resolved.
So I just want to add one issue of agriculture. I think he's touched a very important point which probably in the entire 2 days we have not traversed, agriculture. I mean, today in the morning I saw that India has banned export of non-basmati rice. We've just banned it because of climate change. Do you know how many times Xi Jinping has been running all around the countryside asking people to produce rice? How much loss China has suffered because of unseasonal wheat crop rains, and half their wheat crop has been destroyed, and the kind of water problems they've had in Beijing, and at the core of it they don't have food technology. They might have Smith chips, but they don't have grain technology. They're completely dependent on the West for grains and they don't have it. And they have a major problem of food, right? And I think we need, that's why I said a lot of things, like yesterday Mr. Ranade also said there's a whole lot of change. And this change is not only in technology. Technology is not resident in chips alone. Technology is a bigger subject which covers a larger horizon. But I just thought I'll handle, I think, sir, sometime we should handle this also, agriculture.
Yeah, just to add to what General Shankar said, I was listening to the Drum Tower podcast by The Economist, which they have an excellent episode on agriculture, how in China, what people are planting has been changed many times over the last 40-50 years. So farmers will be told to plant something, watermelons or apricot trees or whatever, and then 2 years later they'll come back and say you rip everything apart and then plant something else. And now what they are doing is rip whatever is there apart and go for rice, go for the grains. So that's what is happening there.
And
They're desperate.
They don't have expertise. They don't, not only technology, they don't have expertise. This is the problem with China. Everything is new every year. The government has ensured everything is new every year. So what does that chap do? That's a major problem. In fact, I'm glad this has come out, because we have to understand their major weaknesses. If as a nation we keep thinking of his strength and our weakness, then we have lost the battle. The battle is not to pitch, his weakness, his strength against your weakness, but your strength against his weakness. Are we doing it? That's the idea, right? And I think so seriously. When we have these technology sessions, we have a different path altogether. Our Prime Minister has gone to USA and we are talking of ISET. How do you make ISET work? How do we make ISET work? After all, if the Prime Minister of a country has gone and met with the most powerful head of the country of, in the nation, in the international fora, and they've said we'll have ISET, we need to see how to make it work. That's a serious thing which we really have to think. And let me also put it on a personal level. We are doing something about it. It's not as if we are not doing something about it. Just to give you a heads up, day after tomorrow, the chairman of the NSAB is coming down to Chennai. And we're going to have a talk. Director IIT Madras, self, and Dr. Christopher, he's coming to consult us. He'll throw his ideas. We'll give 2 bits of our ideas. He might throw it out of the window, but doesn't matter. At least he's got the ideas. Right? I think we need to think differently as to how to handle this whole affair. Thank you.
Yeah. One more question. We can go to the online questions. No online questions. Okay, good.
Sure, thank you.
We have ended in time for the next one. Thank you. You have been handed in time.
I thank Mr. Satyanarayanan for having effectively moderated this session. I also thank the members for their active participation in the Q&A. Before we conclude, I would like to request Mr. Sashi Nair, Director and Editor, Press Institute of India, to felicitate the chair for the session, Mr. K. Satyanarayan. Thank you, sir. Now I request the chair, Mr. Satyanarayan, to felicitate the distinguished speakers, namely Mr. Arun Bambali, Professor S. Chandrasekhar. Yes, sir. We'll have a sapling safe with us. And Mr. Dominic Karunesudas. Thank you, sirs.